All right, welcome to October's Friday Live. Friday Live is our community meetup and our sort of our give back to our FileMaker community. It's nice to see lots of new faces here, so welcome. I guess hopefully we have a good topic today. I think so. Our main presenter is going to be Pearson. Pearson's our UX designer. He designs all of our main products, and he also designs this consulting with our clients who are using our services. He's going to be talking about Figma, which is a UX design application. I think everybody probably knows that already. We're going to also have some other things today. We're going to have some product updates. That'll be led by Hassan, and we're going to talk about some new functions and things like that we've added into BetterForms for this particular month's release. And we're also going to talk, if we have a little bit of time, we're going to show you a quick preview of something that we're launching in about a week's time or so. We're in beta now, and that is our Figma plugin. So we're pretty excited about that. Just one quick shout out to some of the upcoming events. We recently had Full Access, which was an event in California. Is anybody here? Did anybody here attend that? Chris Conger was telling me that was really, really good. He says one of the best technical ones he's been to. So, and it sounded a lot as he described it. It sounded a lot like how .fmp is or Vienna calling now. So we have coming up next week is Engage You. That's going to be in Antwerp, Belgium. You'll see we are sponsors there, and you'll see some of our team there. We have a booth, so please do come by and say hi. And I think we're also doing some other interactive events at the show as well. Pearson's going to be presenting a talk on interactive UX testing and getting feedback. So that's going to be really good as well. Vienna Calling is our next conference coming up after that. I don't think there's anything other in between there, and that's going to be in Vienna. We'll most likely be attending that. And then finally, this year running in Toronto again will be Elevate FM. This time it'll be a 2-day conference. And I don't know the exact dates, and it says Vienna here. That's incorrect. But that was a fun conference, and that was our whole team went there because we're located in Toronto, so that kind of worked out really well for us. So hopefully you get a chance to come out to some of these events. There's not going to be, if you don't know already, there won't be a Claris Engage in North America this year. And I guess I know the attendance was kind of dropping down each time, and they got lots of pushback from the venue and whatnot. So the email made it look like they're going to do some regrouping. So we'll see. It's okay for us though, because it gives us an opportunity to attend a lot of other events as well. I'm going to switch things over to Hassan. Hassan's our product owner for BetterForms, and he's leads up the team as to what tasks we're working on and tries to keep everybody in line so we can get some stuff shipped out. So I'll pass it over to you.
Hey guys, good morning everyone. Yeah, let me take it away. So this week in our coming deploy, which you guys could expect to see early next week, one of the major features that's added is now our enhanced components. With this, we'll have the ability to share components as well. So if you click add now, you'll be able to see a bunch of components that we've made, and you can easily use this in your app. Charles will be going over this today after Pearson's Let's Learn Figma talk. Additionally, we've added a bunch of new BetterForms functions. The documentation can be seen over here, and we'll also be discussing all of this after Pearson's talk. Coming up, we have our next version of AI, which is almost ready. Figma to BetterForms, which will also be demonstrated after Pearson's Let's Learn Figma. And there are other things coming next week, such as normalizing site saves. This is going to be huge for anyone working with big payloads or a lot of collaboration. This should significantly reduce your save times, as well as allow you to work on multiple of our site tabs without collaboration getting in the way. This will also pave the way for numerous enhancements throughout the app, such as being able to change our slug from the page. In addition, with next release, we'll include several bug fixes and a lot of GUI updates, so look out for that. And that's all. Yeah, just note that our changelog will be out early next week when we announce an announcement. You can click help and changelog to view all the changes that have taken place.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Hassan. I'm just going to quickly dive in a little bit more detail. I'm going to jump back to my screen here. I'll dive into a little bit more detail on the component feature. And there we go. All right, basically, let me just make sure I got some stuff set up here. All right. Basically, right now I just have a blank page here, and so normally we can take elements like here's a group, and I can drag a group on there, and I can drag things into there. Let's find an input field, and we'll drag that inside our group. I'm just going to outline my groups here. One of the things we also added last month is dark mode support. Just a quick reminder, because we had a couple people ask about this. Dark mode does not automatically turn on or enable your app to be dark mode. You have to prompt it and do a bit of changing there for that. Let's just do this here for a second. All right, so I have I can normally drag on these various elements, but what happens if I want to drag on something that's a little bit more complex? So in the past, we had lots of examples, and we have examples on how to do things like file upload, and we demonstrated this last month as well. But with the ability or some of the new abilities that we've added in for components, now we can drag much more complex components. So currently, I only have a few components in my app here, but I want to add some. So I'm going to jump over to the components page. And I am going to add, and we are going to add, let's do a segmented switch here. This is an interesting switch. So I'm going to add that component. That was a community component. Currently, these components will be, for the next month, the components will be curated by us. We'll release a few every day or every few days. And then in a month or so, we'll allow the community to share components as well on our next release after this. So I've added the segmented switch here. And I'm going to jump back to my page. Oh, I'm just going to, oops, sorry, just do this again. There. All right, we'll jump back into our page, and I'll just give you a quick idea of how that will work. I'm using a staging build, so. All right, well, there's the demo gods have got us. Let me just see here. Just a second here. I can't use this one. This is for later on. Let's try this again here. Okay. All right. All right. So I have my page here. And here's my segmented mode switch. I'm going to drag this on, and now I have a tab type interface. So I'm going to just reduce the width of that. So I want to say max width, and then we'll maybe make it about this wide. And I'm just going to center that. Margin on the x-axis is, there we go. So I'm just going to save this, preview, oops. There, save that. And MX auto, I keep clicking off here. My costume's getting in the way here. All right. And we'll just preview this. So just to give you an idea, normally to build these kinds of widgets, it's there we are. Oh my God, there's one key I didn't add in here. Now I have the ability to easily drag and drop these more complex type UI widgets. We've also added a couple other really key things into our base code. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I do want to just jump into this really quick, and it's called, this is a little bit more advanced. This is a new function that loads third-party libraries, and it does it in a kind of a smart way. It's called BF library load once. What that allows you to do, this is a little bit more advanced, so it's not going to be for everybody, but it allows you to load in third-party libraries. We could always do this already with our CDN tags, but now you can actually load them at the time the component renders, so, or just before the component renders. So that means I can go and add some type of a component into my app. And let's jump over to here again. I'll just show you one more example. Let's try this one here. This is a QR code reader, and I'm going to add that. So I've added that into my application, and let's jump into our page here again. And jump into components, and oh, sorry, there's one little small issue here. I just have to refresh my entire application. There we go. And now I can drag this QR code component on, and hopefully, I'm not sure if this, again, sorry, this is pretty premature here, but let's just see. Oh, I'm gonna redo a refresh. And yeah, well, maybe we'll cut that out of the video. All right, this is a component that I was just working on, and basically it allows, with this new functionality, it allows these components to pull these libraries down dynamically. And we'll talk about this a lot more once it's finally released in next month's Friday Live. So have a look through this if you're interested in that in the docs. This stuff is available right now in version 3 of our base code. And you can start playing with that right away. The other things with the community components, that, as Hassan said, that'll be released next week or so. I think that's it for those. All right. We're going to pass things over so we leave lots of time. Lots of time. We're going to pass things over to Pearson, and maybe he can take us away, and we can learn all about Figma.
Cool. Thanks, Charles. So for anybody who maybe joined a little late or who didn't hear us talk about this earlier, I sent a link to a Google Form survey. This is just to collect a little bit of data about yourself so that we can understand who am I actually teaching today, and what is your experience with Figma? How advanced or maybe novice are you? Just some data for us to take a look at afterwards, and maybe help inform us if this is something that we want to continue doing. But I'm really excited to share my knowledge of Figma. It's something that I use every day. It is like the pretty much the only the only software that I use on a daily basis. Just everything I do is on there, so it's really kind of like a second home to me. Um, it was kind of interesting when I was going through the application trying to figure out what am I going to teach, kind of trying to figure out what level am I uh, going to try to explain things on. And I realized that there is so much of Figma that I didn't know at the beginning, um, or that didn't even exist when I started using it. So it's software that has really grown a lot. I don't use a lot of the tools that are available. It's one of those things where I think it's a general rule of thumb, the 80-20 rule. I'm using 20% of the features 80% of the time, and that's really all you need to make really useful or really intricate designs, uh, or just to set it yourself up to create some mockups and help yourself get started with coding something. So I'm going to start by just going through some very basic, uh, the most bare bones crash course lessons, starting with just the general navigation or the interface here. So this is Figma for anybody who is unfamiliar. I created a new document, but you know what? Actually, if anybody has Figma or would like to try it, it's also available on your browser. There will be a point a little later that I'm going to have us try to build something together, but I would encourage anybody to open it up if you haven't already. Maybe create an account, just link it to your Google account or whatever. Try it for free, and yeah, maybe you can follow along. And if you're already familiar, then this will be very simple for you. But I just want to go through some of these basics first. So we have Figma. I created a new document. Um, I'll start again just from the very scratch. I have a new document. It's untitled. It's just located in my drafts. It's not organized or moved anywhere. And here we have what's in my file. I have some pages and I have some layers. One page automatically. This is my page here. This is kind of just an empty blank canvas, and I have no layers. So let's start with the first thing we need to make is a frame. And a frame is kind of like the canvas that we're going to be working on. Now I can zoom out with my mouse and holding control. There's a lot of keyboard shortcuts that if you've used any other kind of design interfaces or design softwares, there's a lot of overlap. You might be able to pick up on some things just on your own. Like I said, control zoom or control scroll just to zoom in and out, holding space, and you can see the mouse changes to a hand, and now I can kind of drag around my page. And we have a canvas in the middle. So the way Figma and a lot of other design softwares work is that, sure, this is the working space that I'm trying to produce something, but the space all around it, everything here in this vast blank area is still visible and still useful as space. So I can still create shapes outside of this canvas, and I have some preset colors here. These are all the Tailwind colors. So I still have elements that I can drag around. Um, but here is the page that I'm going to try to work on. And we call those frames. Um, on the right side here, we have all the properties of the elements that we're working with. So here is the frame. I've selected the frame. You can see the outline. I can drag it around, resize it, and you'll see that on the right side here, these numbers, the width and the height, are corresponding to the size that I'm dragging my frame around as. And so you can change these sizes manually. They actually also handle calculations. So sometimes there are few instances where I'll say, okay, I need this to be twice the size of what it is right now. So I'll just do 700 asterisk 2, and that'll equal 1400.
Hmm.
And so it's really interesting how sometimes those math or those kinds of calculations do come in handy when I'm trying to do something more precise. But other than that, we have some of these properties that can be applied to pretty much all our other elements, but these are just colors. So you have a general color wheel here, and something that they've added recently is this the contrast standard from the WCAG authority, you could say. And the WCAG, I can't remember what it's called. Um, the Web Accessibility Content Guidelines, I think, or the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And that's really just a standardized system to help us design interfaces for people who might have accessibility issues, or just making sure that everything that we produce and put onto the internet is usable by everybody. So here, we'll see, let's just make like a white canvas with some text. So with text, I'm just pressing the T key and it pulls up the ability for me to create text. I'll do that one more time. I'll press T and my cursor changes and I can create maybe a space for text and I can fill that in. But I typically just press T, click once, and sorry, my headphones are just dying. Click T, press once, and that'll open up your ability to start typing things. So this is we'll just call this Friday Live as text. And that pulls up some more properties here. We have our fonts, we have sorry, I should call it the typeface. That is the font family that is displaying the weights of that font and the size of the font. So we'll make that a lot bigger just for clarity. So here we have black text on a white canvas, pretty visible. It passes the WCAG standard. So there's different levels, AA and AAA. The AA is kind of the bare minimum. This is standard. This will be legible for most people. AAA, they don't have that displayed here, but AAA is the extreme standard. That is if you need something to you need to make sure that it is accessible for anybody. So we have black text on or on white background. But if we raise this up, you can see the contrast value decreases, and as we get higher and higher, now it goes above this line that they've added into Figma to show you that anything above this line is harder to see, and
Oh,
it
that's
does
cool.
not pass our contrast guideline. So even if it's a high saturated color, um, it's going to be a little hard to see unless you bring it over just enough that it passes. And now this is a red text on white background that we can generally assume that anybody will be able to read this. So that's just a nice feature that was added into Figma that I used to have to resort to third-party plugins or other softwares to make sure that my colors are contrasting. But That's really nice to have there. Um,
Pearson, can I ask a quick question?
yeah,
Does
anybody
it
feel
also
free.
notify you for color blindness?
Color blindness specifically, from what I know,
Like
I
if you
don't know.
if you choose a second color that was green and you needed them to
Mhm.
be contrasting so people could read both texts, um, you know, or
Yeah,
objects.
that's a good question. I don't think that's built into Figma, but that is also, I'm just looking through some of these buttons. Oh, okay, so you can set it to the AAA standard. I don't know if they are considering color blindness as well, but that is something to be aware of if you're designing anything that you can um, that might be impacted by the colors, and anybody who has color blindness, if they aren't able to use your software because of that, you definitely want to keep that in mind. But to that point, sometimes it's nice to have some visual fail safes, you could say, where maybe I don't have the wherewithal to make sure that all my colors are identifiable to people with maybe some color visual impairments. But let's say that you're making a status for something and you want to say, this is a warning status, and we know that it's a warning because it's red, but we also have it written out as warning. So anybody who can't see the colors is still going to be able to see that this is see what that message is trying to say. So maybe a
Yeah,
clearer example.
yeah, exactly. Like, so an example would be if you didn't have words, you only had a red button and a green button, and somebody and green meant go and red meant stop, but people who are colorblind can't see the difference and they don't know which one is go and which one is stop. But with words, obviously, you can read it.
Hmm. Yeah. So exactly. So it's nice to be able to convey information in at least a couple different ways, and that's the fail safe where if they can't see the color red, at least they can read the word warning, and that way the information is still being transferred from you to the user. Um, but these are just some. Oh yeah. By the way, if anybody else has questions, please feel free. Just let me know, and I can cover that. But yeah, just going through some of these basics. Properties on the right, layers on the left. Um, and I think that maybe I can just get into uh, recreating something. So what I did was anybody who's in Canada or North America, you're probably familiar. The World Series is going on right now. We're located in Toronto. I'm not even a baseball fan, but whenever there's a Toronto team doing well, it really, kind of you feel it in the city. And I felt inspired. I was thinking, okay, well maybe we can just recreate part of their homepage. So this is just very basic. I wanted to show this as an example because these are very simple elements that I think we can recreate and use a lot of these Figma tools to help us create this in a way that um, is responsive and will look nice. So obviously this already looks nice. So the layout is already there. That makes it really easy to recreate, and I think that's a really good practice exercise for anybody who wants to improve on their Figma skills. Just find something that you enjoy, something that's well designed, and see if you can recreate it. But in recreating this, I'm going to go over some of the specific tools and features that Figma provides that helps us create something like this. So, um, yeah, just if there are any Toronto fans or any Jays fans in here, then I hope you appreciate it. And if there's anybody who's an LA fan, then I apologize. But let's take a look at these. So this is all one page, and I was on my phone, took some screenshots. I was just scrolling, and the way I see these interfaces might be a little different than some of you, but I'm looking at all of this in what I call, or what Figma calls, auto layout. So auto layout is the Figma tool that helps create responsive designs easily. So that could mean, let's take a look at this header, for example. Auto layout would just, to me, look like there's an element here, there's an element here, and there's two elements here, and it's all in a container like this. That's how I see these things. I'll
Mhm.
try to make these a little clearer. That's how I'm viewing all these interfaces. I just see containers and what is in the container and how are they organized. So in this one, really simple. It's just one long container with 2 elements on the left, 2 elements on the right. Underneath, I see 3 elements. So I see 3 tabs like this. And this kind of looks like the show outlines on the drag and drop editor. And that kind of, I think that visualization really helps me when I'm trying to create something. So we got 3 elements there, and these 3 things are in one container. Uh, we have this text here. We have another element here, and then these 2 elements down here. And this, what I'm doing right now, is not the process I would take when I'm actually creating something, but this is just to help me show you what I'm seeing. And I see all of these elements in this box down here. So we're going to try to create this now. And if anybody's following, I encourage you to try this along with me. But we're going to start with the header. So the header up here, there are two elements on one side, 2 elements on the other side. 3 of these elements are icons. And you could download these icons from Font Awesome. That's what I would do. Or at least Font Awesome is where I'm using all my icons. That's where we're using our icons in our designs and in our software. Font Awesome is a really great resource, and they're so kind that they created their own library of their components or of their icons. So they have this file here that I was able to copy, and now I can take these official icons and use them in my designs. So that means that when I go to my my assets, I can drag an icon on. Not that one. And I have this icon that I can rename to other things. So magnifying glass. This is using a Font Awesome font. Technically, it's a font that I had to download, one of those OST files, I think it's called. And so it has all of their icons in that font library, and that's how it's able uh, to change these so quickly. Am I going too fast for anybody, or am I maybe skipping some things I'm leaving some questions unclear? Just want to know kind of the pace that I'm going at, if how everybody's faring.
I think it's okay, Pearson. One thing, just quick note is FileMaker itself, if you're designing for FileMaker, it doesn't have this concept of containers really. Like we can't put stuff inside other stuff and then change the outside stuff and have the inside ones react. But that may come at some point in time. And if you're designing anything for external to FileMaker, you definitely have that ability.
Mm-hmm.
I think even if you're designing for FileMaker, you should still group things and not just drop them on the layouts, because that way you can adjust your layout really easy. I think you'll probably demonstrate that in a sec, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As I was going through this, I'm thinking that maybe I kind of glossed over this whole importing assets from a separate file. But maybe I can walk through that really quick. So where I got this file from is from the Figma community. So there is a community where you can borrow or take inspiration or use other people's files or kits that are uploaded here. So I knew that Font Awesome has their own page. So I'm just going to look up Font Awesome here. And they've supplied their Font Awesome 6 library. They just released their Font Awesome 7. So here is their official component. So I looked up Font Awesome. I found it down here. And this is where I was able to open it up in Figma, create my own copy, and save them as uh, an asset library that I can reference. So we're going to create this header here. So I know that there are actually these images were blown up quite a bit. And I also wanted to kind of visualize a wireframe visual of this page. I guess with a wireframe, you're really starting off with just the basic shapes. And so I'm working backwards from a finished product and working backwards to a wireframe. But this is representing, what I might say or might suggest to a client if they propose an idea to me. They'll say, hey, I want to create this web page for my sports team, and I just need to have some articles, and I want to show the players and their stats cards. So this is a wireframe that I might present to them. I can create this really quick. I already know in my head what it could look like. So I'll say, okay, well, so there's a header up here with a few tabs, and if you want a hero image or like the main most recent article, that could be placed at the top with some previous articles down below, and then we'll have the cards of the players underneath that, and you can scroll through to the side. And this is, even though it's so low fidelity, there's no color, there's just blocks, you can still see the vision, and that helps structure ideas and create the framework so that if someone says, maybe I make the call, or maybe the client makes the call, they say, actually, we don't want this. We want it to look a little something. We don't want to show all the other ones, all the other articles below. We just want to show the main one from today. So we can remove that, bring that up here. Oh, we want to show the schedule below. So we might want to add a calendar. So we'll show that under here without going through all the trouble of building it and designing it and making a lot of decisions. This is your space to just throw things on the board, see what sticks, try new things, go through 100 ideas in an hour, and hopefully you land on something that by the end of that brainstorming session, hopefully you land on something that you can see see a path to setting that as a goal to create. Right. So back to the actual creating something. I'm going to take 3 icons and I'm going to set them to a just a regular size. These icons, because they were built in this library from Font Awesome, they created a lot of these properties that I'll also get into showing how to create them. But these properties allow me to take an icon like this and duplicate it, but manage how each of them looks without destroying the original component. So I know that this is a menu bar. I know what some of these icons are called just because I've typed them in enough times, but I want to give this a little room. This, I want to make a magnifying glass. And this one, I want to be user circle. And there's a Jay's image. I'm actually just gonna crop that. And Figma also included, or they've added some tools like remove background. So I'm just gonna remove the background of this image really quick just to show. I think this will work. Just kidding, that didn't work. But I have another example where I'll remove the background of an image, but maybe we'll just keep this as a placeholder. This is a representation of where the logo is supposed to go. Now, I have these sorted out. I could create a rectangle behind everything and just make that blue, move it behind the other items. And I'll change these to white. But this won't be responsive. If I move this around, it's not moving any of the content inside of it.
Quick question. How did you move it behind? Was there a button or a command key that you used to move it back?
Yeah. Sorry, there's a lot of shortcuts that I use that I'm not even aware I'm using shortcuts sometimes. That was control and the two brackets. So if I click on an element and I click control and the right bracket, then it'll move it forward one layer at a time. And we can actually see it on the left side here. We have rectangle selected, and these are these font awesome icons. And if I press control and the brackets is moving it up and down that layer tree. So that's revealing and showing um, those layers. So we're putting this rectangle behind everything because we want these icons to be on top. But like I said, we're moving this around. The icons are not moving. They're fixed in place. And this can look fine as a final piece. If it's just a static image, you could create this whole page like that, but it won't be responsive. And if anything needs to be moved, you're moving 100 elements at a time
Mm.
just to keep everything in place. So instead, we're going to use auto layout. I mentioned that a little earlier, but what auto layout does is it creates containers around these elements and allows you to create responsive containers for them. So here, we're going to group these two together because they're close. We're taking this logo and the icon, and I'm pressing Shift A, and that creates auto layout. You see we've created a new frame, and it's represented by this icon here. So showing a large rectangle and a small rectangle beside each other because this frame, this container, is organizing the elements from left to right. So if I could add a bunch more elements, maybe I'll even put it here, and I'll give this a clearer background. But now I have these elements and the background itself, this container, I filled in with a blue color. I created this color called primary blue, is actually just for me pressing the I button, or sorry, the I key on my keyboard to bring up my eyedropper. I'm clicking this blue because that's the color that I want. And I created my own style of blue by clicking here. This is something I did earlier, and I created a new style, and I styled it as I called it primary blue, and that's how I was able to save the color, so I can reuse it throughout this design. So I'll just call this primary blue again. I'll create that style, and it's been added to my list of styles that I can see if I just deselect everything. Here are my styles that I've created. I'm gonna delete
So is
this
that where we
because
put all our branding colors and things like that?
yeah, exactly. Um, let's say that yeah, we know that this primary blue is an important one. Maybe there's going to be an accent of red. I'm just picking up from the J's logo. So I'm going to press my eyedropper tool, click the red, and however you want to select that color. But I have the color set here, and I'm going to add it as a style. I'll just call this red accent. Now this is one of those things where this is the way that I do things. There are other ways of saving these colors that I won't get into because, it's something that I'm not even familiar with or that I haven't tried. But that's, you know, these things called variables. Now,
Mm.
I won't get into variables because those are more advanced and I don't use variables, so I don't want to teach them because you can still do everything you need with these very basic tools. So I just wanted to create that style. I have a red accent now in my library that I can select from my color palette. So I have these two that I created, and these are other colors that I've imported from a other design system that I made. Um, but let's get back to this. So we have this frame, and here's where I can add padding and customize this container. I could make this increase the padding to the sides. This is the the horizontal padding. So here I've added 16 pixels of padding to each side of this container. This icon is 16 pixels away from the left here. And I'm showing the space between everything by holding the Alt button. And that'll show me the distance between elements. So I could even show the distance from this frame to this frame by holding Alt, and it'll show me just how far away it is. But if I'm trying to create this header, I only want 2 of these things. I don't even want a color, and I don't want any padding because I have another 2 icons here. So I'm gonna hold Alt and drag this frame. So now I have 2 frames. And I'm going to click this icon, duplicate it with Control D. So now I have 2 of these icons. I can get rid of this square. And I'm going to move that to the side. And now I'm going to, so I have 2 groups of 2 things. Now I want another single group of these 2 groups. So I'm going to take these 2 groups and I'm going to auto layout these as well. So I'm pressing Shift A, and now I've created a container for all of them.
Pearson, is that different from just grouping when you've grouped the left 2 icons? Are you just grouping the 2 groups, or is it doing something different?
No, I'm using auto layout multiple times. So I'm creating a group of groups. And I'll show you why. Now I have this larger group containing both sets of icons. And this is the header that I want to create. So now here's where I'm going to add my spacing. So I'm going to add, actually, first I'm going to add a background just because this is so hard to see. I'm going to set it to blue. Now I'm going to add my spacing because I see there's some space at the top. There's some space on the sides. I'm going to do 16 and 16 just arbitrarily, but keeps it even. So now with auto layout, I have everything spaced out. So when I'm changing the size of this container, everything moves along with it because I have this set so that these 2 items, I know that there are 2 items in my layer here. I'll just name this, I'll call this header. And I'll call this left. And I'll call this one right. So my header has the padding, 16 pixels horizontally, 16 pixels vertically, and I can double check that. I have my left section selected, and I'm holding Alt, and I can see there's 16 pixels from the top, 16 pixels from the side, and I have these, my left and my right, they are separated automatically. Just maybe Charles, you can tell me what kind of flex this is, but these are just saying repel them as far as they can within this container.
Yeah. So if you have 2 separate groups like that, you can call justify between, I think it is. And then it'll push the spaces in between because there's only 2 groups. So, or 2 elements, we'll really think about that. And then it just pushes the space in between them. And then there's also justify around, which would put the left side and the right side to kind of move them in a little bit.
Yeah. Well, so there are different ways to organize this auto layout group. So right now I have them separated, justified between. But if I want them, I could have them all to the left. And here's where I'm setting how many pixels between them I want to show. So I'll start with this small group. First, I want to make sure that they're lined up properly and they look nice. Actually, first I'm just gonna change these to the right icons, magnifying glass, and then this one was user circle. Now you might have seen I was typing into here, and you could see the text, and that's not necessarily a Figma feature. That is just how this this font that I downloaded how it works. If you type in the word, then it'll change into an icon, but that's just part of the font awesome component. So now I have the right components and I have the right spacing. I want these two things to be a little closer together. So I'm gonna go here. This is it's a little small, but you can see this is kind of showing, this is setting the space between the items. This right now it's at 22 pixels. I want to shorten this to 12. And I typically like to work in kind of like a multiple of 4 system. So I'm not ever gonna write I want it to be 13 pixels or I want it to be 17 pixels. Is always, for me, this kind of general rule of thumb that a lot of designers use is we use like the 4 pixel or maybe an 8 pixel system, just to keep things consistent and so you're not using these arbitrary numbers. I think that also follows in accordance to Tailwind. I think a lot of their increments are in increments of 4 pixels. So here, when I'm writing, I want this 12 pixels apart. I think this is actually like an X3, uh, or however you would call that in Tailwind, when you're building it out. But for this case, I'm calling it 12 pixels. Now these items are 12 pixels apart, and I'm going to do the same for here. I'm going to make these 12 pixels apart as well. And here, right now, they're set to 244 pixels apart. I could set that to 24, and now these two items are separated only by 24 pixels. But that's not what we need right now. I want them to be, they call it auto, but I want them to be automatically separated just as far as they can. Another part of auto layout is you'll see that these are separated into 3, you could call them 3 heights. So right now they're set to stay at the top of this container. This is controlling,
Oh, I see.
yeah, like this property, since I have the main container selected, I'm changing the properties of how things are going to be displayed within it. So right now everything is aligning to the top. I could have it all aligned to the middle, or I could have it all aligned to the bottom. If I didn't have them separated with auto, and we were just 24 pixels apart, now I can choose between top left, top middle, top right, all the way down into the middle section and the bottom section. So we have um, a lot of uh, power, or we're able to just move these around however we want, while still maintaining the distance between the elements themselves. But right now, I just want them to be separated. I want the height to hug the size of the contents inside this container. So right now I increased the height with my mouse just by dragging and making this taller. But if I want it to hug the shape of the contents within it, I don't want it to be any taller than it needs to be. There's a drop down here on the height property, and I can tell it to hug the contents. And now this is going to be as tall as the contents are. So made this if I made this icon bigger, or I made this, this logo bigger, the container is following the size of the contents. Because I made this bigger, now the whole container is bigger. And if I wanted to set this to the middle, I'm doing it from this area here. How's everybody following along so far? I feel like I might be throwing a lot of information, and and I don't want anybody to feel like I'm going too fast or that they're getting lost. Just wondering how we're doing. I'm seeing some chats.
Not too much as far as feedback
Okay.
there. Does everybody understand like the why you'd want to do this? Like why you'd want to make that middle section stretchy? Okay. Bob says yeah. So if Bob says yeah, we're good to go.
Cool.
Yeah,
So
so
I'm gonna
whatever device you come across, it'll automatically adapt. Just a
Exactly.
question I have on your vertical hug. Is that automatically set based on what Figma sees as your horizontal settings? Is it trying to just replicate that, or is there a separate setting for how much vertical hug?
uh so um let me see if I'm understanding your question correctly. So it's I've set the padding to 16 pixels vertically.
Right.
So now it knows that if it's gonna hug the
Okay.
contents of this container, it's gonna
Okay, I
give
see it.
16 pixels of space between.
Right, right. Yeah, sorry, I missed that. Okay.
Yeah, no worries. All right, so now I have this header. And I'm gonna create a new frame to put it in, because this is all just these are just screenshot images. I didn't create these. So I'm gonna create a new frame to add this header to. And to create a frame, I'm gonna press F, and Figma provides you could create your own frame whatever size you want, but Figma provides dimensions for the most common screen sizes. So we have all these different phone sizes. We have some tablet sizes, desktop, computer screen sizes. Really, the name of the frame doesn't really matter whether I use a 16 Pro or 16 Pro Max. The size difference is not that great, but it's just a nice representation of what you're designing for. So I'm gonna take this. I have a iPhone 16 Pro frame. I'm gonna take my header and I'm going to move it into the frame. And I'm gonna use these positioning tools just to help me, you know, make sure that it's at the very left, and I'm gonna put it at the very top, and I'm gonna reduce the size so that it fits within my frame now. And that's one reason why we use auto layout is because now, depending on no matter what size screen I have, it's gonna follow the shape that I want. And for it to follow the shape of this container, of this frame, if I change the size of this frame, this header is not gonna change automatically because this isn't in any kind of auto layout. It's not encompassed by an auto layout to help it move or change shape. So if I change the size of this frame, the frame size changes, but this isn't an auto layout uh, frame here. So what I want to do, or what I could do, and it's a little different. I'm not sure how I would explain it right now, but if I want this to follow the size of its container, there's this other method where I'm gonna show or I'm gonna select this here. So what this tool is doing is it's saying where this element is gonna follow relative to this frame, because it's not auto layout. So like I said, this frame, if I move it to the right, nothing moves. If I move it to the left, it does move. It's still stuck to the left side. And that's because right here, we're keeping it stuck to the left, stuck to the top. So if I make this taller, it stays to the top. If I make this shorter here, nothing moves. If I were to reduce this size again, and I held shift and I told it to stick to both sides, now both of these are selected. If I wasn't holding shift and I just click one and another, then they get deselected. But if I hold shift, select both of them, now when I resize this, the contents shift with it. I understand it's a little confusing. What is the difference between that and auto layout? It is quite similar. It's just that you're using them in different scenarios, and without getting too deep into when you use one versus the other, I think as you start to learn how to use Figma, those situations will become more apparent. Um, I'm just going to go through and create a couple more of these elements. I want to create this section here because this is a little more interesting than just the header and a couple tabs. But I want to create this card because I think that's more interesting. And here's how we do it. So I got this photo of George Springer one of our players on the Jays, and I got a picture of him from the internet, and I can remove the background because I don't want this white background. I want it to be able to show the blue behind him. So I'm going to take this image, I'm going to go to my tools down here, and I'm going to remove this background, and Figma will do that for me automatically. And there we go. It's transparent. On this image, because it's just a PNG that I dropped in, I can hold Control and I can crop this image. So now it's a little smaller. I just want this to be the size of him. I don't need all that extra space. So now I have this picture of George Springer. What do we have here? We have some text here, some text here, some text down here. I'm going to just start putting it on my screen. So it's OPS. I'm going to change my font to Enter because that's what I typically always use. And I'm just going to try to make it look roughly the same underneath. And I'm clicking Alt and dragging to create duplicates. Otherwise, you could click Control C, Control V to duplicate and create another instance of that. This is 0.959, and I'm going to make this nice and big, really bump it up, make it a heavier font just to replicate that look. There's some more text down here. This is his name. And I guess that's his position and his number. Again, I don't watch baseball, but I will cheer for any team that plays in my city.
So Pearson, is that normally the workflow that you would do? Like you would design all the parts first and then wrap it up like with
Exactly.
a box? Oh, that's interesting. I
This,
think the majority of people would make the box first and then we try to get the
yeah.
stuff to fit inside it.
Yeah, there's a million ways to do a single thing. This is how I do it. This is how I've become comfortable doing it. I just like to put everything on, see, like, generally lay it out, and then I'll wrap everything up like you said. So this is a little smaller. That's just his name. I guess it's a little heavier than that. And his name here. Actually, I'm just going to copy that, delete it, duplicate this because I want this to be the same size. And so now I have these 4 different text layers. These are all, like you can see here on the side, these are all their own independent layers, but I want to group them. So here's how I see this card. I'm going to just show it here again. On this card, I see a group of text here and another auto layout group of text here and his face on the right. And that's all encompassed by another auto layout group. So I know that I'm going to have one big group holding everything, and that's going to separate these sections. So we have the right side of his face, the left side with this text. But in this left side is 2 groups of text stacked up on top of each other. So we have some groups stacked next to each other, and then inside one of those groups is stacked on top of each other. That's how I see these shapes. So I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna make this a group, auto layout, Shift A. I'm gonna make this an auto layout group with Shift A. And then I'm gonna take these 2 groups and make that an auto layout group, Shift A. And then I'm going to take this group and this picture and click Shift A and make another auto layout of that. So now I have this group of everything. Him on the right side, that's just an image. The text on the left side, and of that text, I have OPS and this number, and I want to keep that just a little closer. And then these 2 pieces of text at the bottom, and I just want to make sure that this stays at the top and this stays at the bottom. based on how tall this image is. So I'm gonna, similar to how I was able to make a container hug its contents, I can make a container fill its contents, or fill the container that it resides in. So this picture of George Springer, I'm gonna just make that a little smaller. But this picture of him is 226 pixels tall. This container of text is only 201 pixels tall, and you can see that there is some space at the top and at the bottom. But I want it to be, I want it to stay the same size as the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the height, and instead of hugging the contents, I'm going to make it fill the container that it's in. So now it fills the container. I have 75 pixels separating this top layer and this bottom layer, but this bottom layer isn't touching the bottom here. So that's when I want to go into my alignment tool, and I want to say I want the top element at the top, and I want the bottom element at the very bottom of the container. So I'm going to double click here. I can either double click here or I can set this to auto, but I'm just going to double click, and now this element's at the bottom, this element's at the top, regardless of how tall this image is going to be. So now we have this shape, or this group of elements. Still trying to make it look more like this, so I'm gonna give this a background. It's gonna be a little darker than this that I used. So I'm gonna detach this style. I don't want this to be primary blue. I'm just starting off here, but I'm going to remove that style. Now it's just the regular hex code. I just want to make that a little darker manually, or I could just copy the color that already exists here. I'm going to press the I key with my eyedropper, and I'm just going to copy this exact color. And now we have a perfect match. I'm going to take these. What I like about Figma is that I have a selection color palette. So if I have like a bunch of things, all different colors, like this, 3 different colors. Here's the fill, here's this fill, and here's this fill. These are the colors that each of them are. But if I select all of them, I can see all the colors down here, instead of setting all the colors as the same color. You know, did you ever try to explain something that you're very familiar with and try to explain it, and it just comes out like like just fluff? That's how I feel right now.
Mm.
Basically, it's just a nice way to see the colors that you've selected, and you can change them individually like that. I want to change the black color to red, and I want to change this red to green. It's just nice to be able to do that. So here, if I
Sorry, Pearson, Jay Warren had a question. It says, how can this be
Sure.
used? How can this be used directly for FileMaker? Is just for mockups? And I could probably touch base on that one. Most of the time, the majority of developers that I've met tend to mock up right in FileMaker. But there's very easily, arguably, pros and cons to doing that. If you mock up and use FileMaker as your tool for mocking up, you're starting to actually build your solution, which means you have commitment to what you're building. You know, you mocked it up for an hour. Now you have partly of a solution. But if you've gone down any kind of wrong path, you've already committed yourself to doing that, and you're unlikely, you know, do the sunk cost fallacy. You're unlikely to back out of that and scrap that entire design, all your tables, anything that you've done in there. So one of the ideas of using a separate tool outside of FileMaker for design is that you don't have this emotional commitment. You can just grab that entire card, duplicate it, lay it out in a different way, and you're not stuck. You haven't connected it up to a bunch of fields and things like that. So there's a lot less investment, and you're not more open to changing your ideas. Hopefully that answers that.
Yeah. Figma is a tool to create design things without the labor costs of coding it all. So this is just a way to visualize what you're going to build. And it's, usually a lot faster than having to code everything. So as I continue to do this, I want to change this color to white. And so this is looking close, but I have this negative space at the side and at the top here that I want to also represent or replicate here. So I could, your first instinct might be to add the padding. So we'll add some 16 padding to the sides and 16 paddings to the top. Maybe actually a little more. I'm going to go to 24. And that's fine. But now you see George Springer, he's kind of floating in here. He's not set to the sides and the bottom like he is in this image. So that's an instance where you might not want to add padding to the main container, but you can add it to the inner containers. So I'm going to keep it as 0 on this container's padding, but I want to add the padding to here because that's where it's looking like it's floating. So I'm going to add 24 here. Oops. 24 and 24. Now this got squished a little bit because all this text is trying to fill a container that is too small. If I expand this, it looks better. But the reason why that happened, it was because I should have all of these text elements not set to fill. I should have them set to hug because I want each text element to be its full width. So however long this name is, I want it to show the whole thing. Now these containers that these text elements are in are trying to fill out this container. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to set everything to hug. And I'll fix the rest after. So now we have this container. Text is floating like it is here. This is a little far. I'm going to drag that in. This is the space between here. I'm going to set that to 24 as well. And George Springer, he's still, his face is still, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make this smaller. And now we're going to set this frame. This is the main player card. And I'm going to set the contents of this player card to the bottom right so that he's at the bottom and stuck on the right. Just like that. I could probably make him a little taller. And we also have some of these guys down below. And here's where I'll show how to create reusable components, which is similar to how we use components in BetterForms, but we're going to show how to do it in Figma here. So now we have this section of the card done. That's him right here. Now I want to do the bottom. Actually, sorry, this might just be me nitpicking, but I want a little space in there. Okay, that looks a little better. So now we have his teammates, or I guess these are some comparisons. This is who are the top hitters right now. We have Vladdy Guerrero, Bo Bichette below. So I'm going to create an instance of one of these rows. So I need a picture of a player. I need some text that I'm just going to copy from here. I'm going to set this to black. And there's also some more text beside it. This is going to be a little smaller. And I'm going to select, first I'm going to select these two first because they are close together. I know they're attached. So I'm going to auto layout this. And now I'm going to take this frame and this element, and I'm going to auto layer this. So now I have this group of two things, and this is just one thing at the end and I'm going to make this a component. So I'm going to press Control Alt K, and that creates a component. Now you see that it's highlighted in purple. It's got this diamond icon next to the name of the frame, and that's representing this the mother component. This is the component that I'm going to make copies of. So I'm just pressing Alt, clicking and dragging, and then making copies of that component. Because whatever I change in this component will change to these ones down here. So maybe I made a mistake and I changed my mind. I want this to be a little larger, some bolder text, and this is going to be just an image, but I want this to be a circle. So I'm going to round the edges of this square. This is rounding the edges by pixels. I know that I want it to be a circle, so I typically just type in a large number, and that'll turn it into a circle there. So I have 3 players who are going to be underneath this card, or I guess this this image. And in order for them to be responsive, I'm going to turn these into an auto layer group as well. So I'm pressing Shift A. They have some space around with a white background, so I'm going to give it a white background. I'm going to add some padding because we see some space up above and to the side. I'm going to do another 16 by 16 padding. And now, again, we see that the contents are spilling over the edge spilling over the container. And instead of just adjusting the container to fit the contents, I'm going to make the contents fit the container. So why are these spilling over? Well, we can look at our component here. And I'll just give
Speaking
this a
of
name.
components there, Pearson, Jan is asking, can you show can you show again how to make the diamond one?
Yes.
So I guess that one there, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just going to take these elements individually. So here we have individual elements. These are not grouped together by any means, but I'm going to first, at least for this component, what I'm going to do is I'm going to auto layout these two, and this doesn't have to have any auto layout because it's just on its own. But I'm going to take this group and this layer, and I'm going to press, actually, I'm going to put these in an auto layer group with Shift A. So now I have these 3 things in a contained group. And once I have that group, I can press Control Alt K. That's Control Alt K. Or I could right click and I think there's a button down here. Yeah, create component, Control Alt K.
So
And
really a
now this is a
component is
component.
just a group of a bunch of items that's defined as a component.
Yeah, and a
Yeah.
component doesn't have to be auto layout. A component could be,
Yeah.
just some random shapes, whatever. And
Cool.
if I select these and Control Alt K, now this is a component. It just doesn't have any auto layout, so I usually don't create components this way. If I start dragging it around it,
But I guess there's certain use cases that may make sense.
yeah, there definitely are use cases that make use of creating components this way. But I do try to keep everything in auto layout. It just keeps everything really nicely organized, and I'm not doing anything kind of abstract in my designs. So keeping those kind of rigid containers really does help. But here, why are these? I'm kind of asking this out loud as a rhetorical question, but also I'm trying to figure this out as well. So this is filling out this container of these 3 elements is filling this container, this white container. But they are not, but it's spilling over because this component that I created, it's always got 94 pixels between the elements. So there's
So
always 94 pixels
should you
between.
always make the things minimum size then? Is that the idea?
I wouldn't say there's a general rule of thumb to always do it one way or the other. It all just depends. But see, on my main component, I have 94 pixels. I actually don't want that. I want this to be auto. So now, whatever size this is, even if it's in a smaller container, it's always going to be, this is always going to be at the right side of the container, and this content is always going to be on the left side of the container. So even if I make this big, those numbers will follow along with it. And since I made this a container, or sorry, since I made this a component, I don't want this to be as big and as bold, and that'll all change at the same time. And I can still make changes to these components. So this is Beau Bichette, and he's got a 0.84. This is, I'll just call him Vladdy G. He's an 848, and not here 769 for Andro Kirk. And even though I changed their names, it's still connected to this component. So they still hold all the same properties. I was just able to change the data and do it that way. I also noticed there's these lines underneath that kind of separate each of the players. So what I could do is I could make a line, and I'm just using the pen tool. So I'm pressing P, and that brings up the pen tool. The pen tool is, you might have seen it in Photoshop or in Illustrator. It can do some great things, but for this case, I'm only using it to create a line. So I'm pressing once to start the line, pressing a second time to end the line, and I could keep going and make more lines, but I only want that one. So after I've created the 2 dots, I'm going to press escape and escape again. Now I have a single line here that I could add to my auto layout group, where now it's acting as another element, and I'm going to have this span the full width of the container, and I'm going to make this a little lighter, change the color, and I'm going to duplicate this a couple times, or just once. So now we have the same lines between each of these items. But the spacing is a little weird, so I'm going to reduce it from 17. I'm going to change it to just 4 pixels between everything. Oh, that's a little too small, maybe 12. So now what I did there is I'm telling it between each of these elements is going to be 12 pixels of space. So 12 pixels between this and this line, 12 pixels between this line and this item, and same all the way down. And now I have this frame and this frame, which really should be a single frame. So now I'm going to do my last auto layout. So I'm taking this group, and I'm going to combine them into an auto layout. Select both of them, Shift A. I don't need any space in between them, so I'm going to set this to 0. And now I have this card that I can, the card as a whole, I'm going to add a corner radius, because these are nice rounded corners. Those look pretty big. I'm going to call that 16 pixels. Oh, but nothing showed up. Nothing was rounded on my corners. Why is that? That's because the container is not cropping its shape, you could say. So I have my corners rounded by a lot. Nothing's changing. I have to click Clip Content in order to actually see that change. So I'm going to change this back to 16. I think that's about right. So now I have this card made up of a bunch of different groups, but when I think this should work, but when I change this card, oh, there's a lot of Figma is, playing around and seeing what's working and making your adjustments. So if I want this card to be wider, I want this to stay on the left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this auto layout group, and instead of having it aligned bottom right, I'm going to keep it on the bottom, but I'm going to double tap and have it auto separated like that. And if I make this taller, I guess I didn't set anything to adjust as it got taller, but at least now I have a card that can be can be wide or shrunk, and I can create this as a component so that I can make duplicates of this. As we see here, this is like a carousel of different cards, and they go off screen, and they might look like this. So that's 3 different cards. I'm gonna auto layout that. I'm gonna add it to my original frame. So now this is auto layout. I'm gonna give this a title here, team leaders. And I'm not gonna bother with those buttons below just for now, just for the sake of getting this done. So we have team leaders here, and we want to create a blue background for this. So we're going to use auto layout again. I know it might seem redundant, but this really is how I build everything. So I'm going to auto layout these so that I can add another set of padding, 16 to 16. I'm going to put this to the side, and I'm going to give this container a blue background. And I'm going to make this white. I'm going to reduce the space between this and this. Reduce that to maybe 16 as well. And there we have it. So I'm just, trying to showcase how we can replicate these interfaces, or maybe not. The intention isn't to replicate, because that's not what we're using this for. We're creating mockups and creating wireframes, but at least by replicating an existing interface, I can show you how it can be designed and how you get to that design. Because right now, like, it really is quite similar. Like, a lot of this is just me looking at it and trying to visualize how can this be built in Figma. And creating these groups, I think, will also help organize and visualize how to create it in BetterForms, especially when we have our drag and drop editor, where you can create the groups in the drag and drop, create groups in the drag and drop editor the same way we're creating these auto layout groups, where it's a group inside a group holding more groups and groups. And as you get deeper and deeper and deeper, you're getting into more and more of these groups of elements. But by keeping everything contained, you're keeping everything organized and giving yourself the opportunity to make responsive interfaces. Is there anything that maybe I glossed over, that I went too fast on? Anything that you'd like clarification on? I hope that was a comprehensive introduction to Figma and seeing what you can do with it.
Okay.
But I'd love
Yeah,
to
I
hear your
have a quick
thoughts.
question. You were saying components. I didn't understand the purpose of creating a component and what happens to them after you create the component.
Mhm.
Do they sit in the assets? Do they sit somewhere? Like,
Yeah, so that's a great question. So what I did here was I created a component for player rows, and that is specifically how are these gonna look. And I created it I made it a component because, as you can see here, I reused this component appears 9 times, 3 on each card. And if I wanted to make a change, let's say they weren't components, and I'd have to go in to every single one and say, actually, I meant for this to not be bold, so I'm gonna make this medium. I'm gonna make this medium. Maybe I could just select all of them like this individually, and then I go to medium. But I don't have to do that because I made it a component. Now, as a component, I only have to change it one time here. This is the mother component that dictates the properties of all of its copies. So here, I'm going to make this medium, and every component underneath follows the same property change.
If you delete the original component, Roger is asking, will it, if you delete the original George Springer component, will it affect the others?
It won't directly affect them. I could delete this and it's gone. And these still
So they're
are
just not
technically
attached anymore.
components. But
Right.
now they're not attached. Yeah, there's no mother component to control. And so it'll even say, I think, yeah, up here, it'll say restore component because this component no longer exists.
And where is the component stored? Is it on the left? Is it in assets? Like, where is it that you could use it again? Or do you just have to leave it floating in the page and you have to know it's a component? Like, how are you indicating that you know that that's a component?
Yeah, so here we have the visual indicator that this is a component is purple with a diamond. But once you create this as a component, it does get saved into your assets, into your local file assets. So here it
I'm
knows
trying.
it.
The only reason I'm asking is I'm trying to find it in my assets. I created the
Oh, sure.
component and I don't
You have
see
to
it in
pull it
my
out of your
assets.
assets. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah, it should be.
I'm clicking my assets.
You gotta pull your components out of your assets.
when you click your assets, do you see it in
Now I
anything
see
here?
it. Thank you. It's
Got
at the
it?
very top. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I see below that UI kits. Because I'm just in the free account.
Yeah.
I just set up a very new free account.
Yeah, and so Figma, they, this is another new addition that I never was privy to when I first started using this, but they've supplied some very basic kits for anybody creating things. So they actually have the official iOS and iPad OS UI kit. So I could even go in here. I think I can open up this file. I'll just show it from here. But you can open up this file and it has all of the components from the iOS system. So let's see, like all of the menus. This is their style for their menus, and this is how you can use their design system. If you're creating like an app for Apple and you needed to follow these rules that they have, or you need to make it look like it's Apple, an Apple interface. But yeah, maybe another thing on components, another advantage to components is that you're kind of creating this, like I said, the mother component. Here's here's like the original. You can add properties and you can add variants to it. So let's say I wouldn't do it in this case because it's a mobile app, but if I wanted to give it a hover state, I create two versions of this component. It's still the same ones, player rows. This one, I've created a property called hover. And on this first one, my hover property, I'm going to set to off. And Figma recognizes these Boolean terms. So I'm going to set this to off. I'm going to set this to on. And now the on, if I'm hovering this, I want this to be a little bolder. Maybe I'll even underline it. And I'll give it a light gray background as opposed to the white background. And by doing this, now I have this toggle because I set it as a Boolean on or off state. I can turn it on, I can turn it off, and that shows me the variance of that component. And I'll actually make that just a little darker so it's easier to see. But this is what it looks like on the hover state, and this is what it looks like.
You're not actually defining. You're not saying hover anywhere, right? This is just an alternate display.
I called it hover, like I created
Right, you
a
called it
property.
hover. Okay, gotcha.
So this property could be called, it could be called anything. But the property itself, I have an on state or an off state and an on state. Figma recognizes on off. I think it recognizes yes and no. I think I could just call it yes and no, and that would still work. If I didn't call it that, if I just called this, if I called this state, and this was hover off, and this is hover on.
Would it recognize true false as well?
True false also does work, yeah. But if I called it, if I didn't use those defined Boolean terms, This is now just called hover on, hover off, and it still works the same. It just, I don't have that built-in toggle. And this comes in handy for one, if you're trying to show your developers or you're trying to create your own design system and you want to show this is the state of hover, this is the state when it's not hovered. It's really good to show that visually for your developers. But you can also prototype in Figma, which is really, really helpful. It's very powerful. And I'll show a very brief example of how that might look. So if you're in the prototype section here, you can say, you can make a connection between this and this. So I'm going to drag this down and I'm going to say that when I hover, while hovering this element or this state of the component, I'm going to change it to this state that I dragged it to. And it can be an instant animation or, a couple other different animations that they have. But by doing that, now I'm just going to drag this component onto this page and I'm going to use this as an example. So I've set this frame as a prototype starting point, and I can open this up. And since I set this component and I've used the component, I've prototyped the component, it will work in this prototype view. So now I can hover over, it recognizes what a hover is. I'm hovering over this component, and I can
And that's
see
only
that it
because of
actually
the
works.
word hover that you used?
No, because I think, is it still called hover? I guess it is. But it's not recognizing from the name, it's recognizing from the way I prototyped it. So
Oh,
I made this connection. I specified that the trigger would be on hover. I could
gotcha.
also trigger it on click. So if I make it on
Right.
click, then now the hover doesn't work, but I can click it
Like an
and it
active
changes.
row kind of an idea. Gotcha.
Yeah. But with that, now I didn't prototype a way to click out of it. So I'm gonna drag this up. So now when I click this element on click, I'm changing it to this state. And these properties are how I defined it. So I could also just go back and the way I write these out is just by calling it hover off, hover on. And when I'm prototyping, when I click this, change to hover off. And that should work here. So now I can click on, click off. And that is some of the power of components and prototyping in Figma. Just how simple it is. It might sound complicated. I hope, like I said before, I hope this was a comprehensive lesson just to kind of show what is possible. And believe me, if you try this out, maybe watch some YouTube tutorials or maybe let us know what kind of lessons or tutorials you would look for or you would like me to walk through. If you keep practicing, it'll come naturally and it's very powerful and can't recommend it enough.
Awesome.
How did you preview just that section of the page?
Yeah, so I clicked the frame that I was working on. So this
Okay,
is
so you have to click the frame first.
Yeah, I'm selecting the frame and I gave it a flow starting point. So that's basically saying, because you can flow between pages or between frames. If you want to get really complicated, you can have a full app prototyped into Figma just with a bunch of frames all connected. But you need a starting point. So you select the frame, you go to the prototype tab at the top right, and you select start flow starting point. I could just call this hover example. And I'm not sure if this shows up on Zoom, but if I click this icon here, it's kind of like a quick preview. Do you see this? This other
Yes.
window that popped up? Okay, great.
Yeah.
So that's like a quick preview. I can click these and I can
Cool.
still manipulate the component in the background. So I'll say, actually, I don't want the hover to look like that. I want it to be a lighter gray. And so it updates automatically. Or I want this to be red. And I can still interact with this.
Is it the link to that you share usually sometimes with clients, or that's a separate thing?
Yeah. So the way I display it on the big screen is from this flow starting point, I click the play button up here, and that brings it to full screen. So it's like presentation mode. You open it up, and if you had multiple flows, maybe I had another screen here that I wanted to show a different prototype. I could call this like example 2 prototype. And this is where I'm showing a different mechanism. And so now I can select those flows from this presentation slide or presentation view. So you create multiple flows. I don't know if I have any. I guess I have some examples that I could pull up if we're interested, but that's the gist.
Awesome. Which ties in to our next, thank you, Pearson. I don't know if there's any other questions, but we can always come back if there is.
Just quickly, if you did all your mock-up here, how would you just, let's say, transfer it or build in FileMaker? Would you just create a background image and then just rebuild everything in FileMaker, Charles? Is that the only method?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, maybe like very briefly, I'll explain the way I would hand this off to a developer is, and I had an example here. And this is something that I would do for our developers where I will walk through the build or like the designs and then
In a sprint kickoff typically, or is that the idea? Yeah.
In a sprint kickoff, but I'm just what was I think it was disclosure. Yeah. And so I'll maybe walk through the full screens and say, hey, when you click this, this happens, or when we scroll, this is how how it should scroll. But what I've also started doing is like I said before, you're showing all the states of these components and how they should work. So here's a screen where you can select between two different ways of searching for something, and this is a tab that you can select between. So I'm showing here's the search toggle. Here's how it looks. Here's how that pill looks on default. Here's how it looks on hover. Here's how it looks when it's selected. And here's how the toggle looks as a whole. And I'm trying to do the same thing for all of these components that do change dynamically. Here's the search field when you're on classic search. Here's how it looks when you're actually when you've actually submitted or entered the search and it's preparing a response. We want this icon to spin as it's loading. And this is how I will try to hand something off. Now, how does it actually get built? That I can't answer. Like how to, transfer these designs into FileMaker or into BetterForms. That is a question for Charles and the developers, but that is how I try to present it.
Yeah. So if you're going to build this in FileMaker, currently, to my knowledge, we don't have any real tools that way to instantly import something like that, and we have a lot of limitations. So you're going to have to work around things like that, those flexible containers. I'm going to jump to my screen here for a second, and all right. And I just took a screenshot of Pearson's design here, and I pasted it and had the AI generate this, and then I had it connect up to some development data here. So here's all the data here for the card, and I did that more or less in 2 prompts. But just to go back to the one thing that you were saying about the auto layout, so you can do these kinds of things exactly currently today in BetterForms. You had a little bit more limitation in FileMaker. Somebody mentioned that those are our anchors. In FileMaker, we kind of anchor to the background, but you can't anchor to other objects. You can anchor to the position of the page. So you have some things that will stretch on one side or both sides. So you're sort of limited because sometimes when you stretch things, they'll start to overlap funky and stuff like that. So you have to be kind of creative there. But here's an example where these two items, they're inside another container. So you can see all of these containers, or Pearson called them frames on the top. We have a page body, and then from there we have groups. And this is a group here with two elements inside. The left side is the data here, and the right side is an image. This is a stock image. of somebody's back of somebody's head. So for here, if we go over to the attributes and we enter flex, we'll see a bunch of options that, oh, sorry, justify, I mean. Justify. We'll see a bunch of options that'll come down. So justify start is at the beginning. So both, just like a typewriter, justify left and right. Justify end, justify center. So both of the items are into the center. Between puts the items in between. That's the one we want. Around puts the space on either side equally with the center space, in this case with two elements being double the half sizes. Evenly is almost the same. I think there's some mathematical thing there. I guess this one has even spaces in between all three, whereas this one has double the space in the middle and half the space on the sides. And there's a few other variants as well in here. So I'm going to pick justify between because there's only two elements. If there's three elements, like for example, if I duplicated this one here, oops. If I duplicated that element there, now you can see there's justify in between here. And if we were to make the entire card, this entire card has, let's see, where's the width coming from here? Medium. So this is actually built to be responsive. A medium-sized screen. It's half the width of the page, and as I go smaller, it jumps up, so it's automatically responsive. We wouldn't have this. Let's get rid of this guy in here. So we wouldn't have those extra this extra element, but you get the idea there. It's the same tools that Pearson is using there. All right, what I want to do though is I do want to show. Yes. I want to show something else. So I have a Figma over here. And in this case, it's actually our chat. We're working on building chat history into our AI assistant. So this is the design, and Pearson mentioned about handing off. So he's handed this off. This is we haven't put a ton of, because it's just myself and Pearson who are working on this part of the project, it's kind of a tighter loop. So he's just made a couple prototypes and he's got some other variants and things like that in here and some experiments, and we're kind of riffing on that. So here he's got this header, he's got the little highlight here, some icons and so on. And I want to bring that over to BetterForms, or if I wanted to bring it over to FileMaker, be sort of in some ways somewhat similar. So let me first just enable something here. Great. All right. So what I'm going to do is one of the new things that we've just released, and this is going to be available for beta testing as of Monday. If you're currently using Figma, right, we're only going to have just a handful of beta testers because we want to keep a really tight and active feedback loop so we can iterate on this quickly. You have to be using Figma and actually using it for design, not brand new to Figma. But if you're using it already and you're copying this stuff or you're moving stuff into BetterForms in your building, then you can join the beta program. It's basically, we'll set you up with an API key. And here's how it works. It's there's instructions on our repo for it, but basically if I go into this actions tool, I can select the BetterForms Figma Bridge, which is our plugin. I'll make this a little bit bigger here for a second. All right. And I'm going to select, I can select the various elements within Figma. I just want the header here. So I'm going to double click on that. Click. There we go. Oop, too much there. Okay. So now I have just the header selected. You will have to do a bit of configuring. You enter an API key and that's it. The plugin has a few settings on it currently. We'll continue to expand that. Typically, when people design things in Figma, they design it at a fixed width, like you saw. But when you bring it into BetterForms, you most likely want to make that thing full width, and then you'll put the stuff around it because it's going to work with other items. You'll put the stuff around it at a smaller width, so you can control that. There is an SVG in here, so we can also remove those SVGs because they can be quite large, depending on what it is. So that's what these settings are for here. So I click send to Figma or send to BetterForms. And that just appeared over in my BetterForms project over here. It's bound to my client or my user, so that'll only appear for me as a user because of my API key. And then if we jump over to BetterForms here, we have this Figma menu, and right now the component is currently converting, right? This is kind of a half manual, not manual, but half programmatic and half AI-based hybrid type conversion that it's doing. I just picked a small element because it'll go a little quicker. And I can do other elements as well if I wanted to. I don't know, there's nothing too exciting on here. Let me see this here. Maybe I want to take this top component here underneath this, and I'll send that one over as well. So now I have two of the components converting, and I would go and dissect my page accordingly. All right, we're going to jump back over to here for a second. And I want to show you one other thing really quick here. While that's converting, it'll let us know in a second. I was in the wrong account when I demonstrated earlier on. I was in an account that didn't have this ability turned on. Some of our components that we have that we can basically drag and drop. WebAwesome is a new component library. You can Google WebAwesome. It's made by FontAwesome, the same company, formerly Shoelace. And here's some examples. This is an example starter, and it's a button. What's interesting, it looks just like a button, but this button was dynamically loaded at the time when I just dragged it in there just now. So it went out, fetched a repo, dropped, and it installed that button in that code there. The other component is done now. And it's installed that. And here's another component here. This is the same thing with Apex Library or Apex Charts. I've dragged and dropped, and I just dropped a chart on here. Now I can go through, I can set all my charts, I can set my style, but we can also use AI for that. Convert this to a pie chart. And we can take that flexible chart library that's been installed. No more grabbing CDNs, no more configuring JavaScript. It's all gone. And just do it. Just do it. No, don't give me. I literally just did this earlier on, and it didn't give me. That's the non-deterministic nature of. All right. Of this. That one failed, but normally you can do this, and we'll look into that. This component was only made a few days ago, so I'm not sure, but nonetheless, you can let's try one more time here. You can just convert the charts, and then from here to connect this to your data, you basically add a calculation. There's my other component is done. You add a calculation and point it to your data. So I have these two components here now. So let's get rid of our Blue Jays one here. I'm going to just delete that. And this is our first one that we dragged on. And let's have a look and compare it to our original. So here's my original. I'm at 148%, so I'm a little bit bigger. So if we bring this into the size. Now, the takeaways here is I've done absolutely nothing. And this is an actual completely well-built, well-structured BetterForms component based on Pearson's design. So we have the brand, and that's an SVG. You can actually inspect that if you really wanted to. We could see there's all the SVG there. It's quite large. It's stuck inside its own group. This group here has Flex 1 attached to it. That's that stretchy thing, that the auto layout. So it's already automatically brought that in. It's added these FontAwesome icons. It's even got the extra hover state here. And I was just asking about Pearson's in his hover because I never included those not variables, were they? Is that what you called them? Or variants? Variants. So we can actually look for that, and we'll probably incorporate that in over the next day or so. Look for those hover states, so it automatically applies the hover onto that. These are actual buttons, so it's actually configured these as a BetterForms button. There's an advantage to that because now I can select an action that the button connects to. So these are 4 different buttons copied from the same FontAwesome library that he used. We already have FontAwesome built into BetterForms. It doesn't have to be. You can use any library you want just by adding the library tag. But that's what we use because out of the 7,000 icons, I think that's good enough for us. Let's have a look at the other one. I haven't tried this one here yet. Oops. And there's my chat history. And let's see if it connected this up as a button. You'll notice one other thing too is Pearson mentioned about layers going all the way down. All of the layers are named, so they're all intelligently named, so that if you're looking for something, you can go ahead and change these if I wanted. For example, here's this bookmark, and if I really wanted to call it, page mark, something like that, I can change that, and now it's page mark here. And the advantage there is as soon as you get something of significant complexity, that's a real bonus by having all of those things named. And we sort of stole that idea because Pearson and I went to Figma config last year. And one of the AI features they came out with is auto layout or auto naming of these things. And the crowd, I think you'll agree, Pearson, the crowd went crazy for that. Like that was the biggest out of all of these features they did. Everybody loved that because I guess it's a real chore to have to label those, and it's a lot easier as a builder to understand what this stuff is and to make those changes. So that's our Figma plugin coming up, and it will be it is available now, but you will need an API key. So don't bother downloading it or installing it until you have a key, because we'll probably be pushing up constant versions. She should be able to spell her name here. Dell's Engineering. And oops, that's the wrong one here. Sorry, GitHub. I'm trying to find our Git. Of course, I can't find it. Here it is. No, that's not it either. That's okay here. So you can find it if you search for Dell's Engineering in our repo, and it's called BetterForms Figma Bridge. It's pretty young. You can see it was only updated a couple hours ago. We only started coding it, I guess, a few days ago, or not too long ago, at any rate. But it seems pretty solid so far. And what we're looking for is we're looking for feedback and saying, hey, it brought this in, but it'd be great if it brought this in and it added the hover state, or it added this flex one, or anything like that. We'll get lots of feedback from our own team because we're very, very heavy in Figma and as a design part of our design cycle there. Does anybody have any questions about that plugin?
Charles,
Mm-hmm.
hi. Only one quick question. You suggest to import singular component, not the full page of Figma, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
And the reason I didn't do this whole one in here, I could have done that because it breaks it down to BetterForms elements. It just takes longer to convert. That's why.
Yeah.
So I just picked a couple small components that are in here. Bob asked, I would assume that your new BetterForms component is no longer attached to the Figma component. Almost. So this is kind of interesting, and this is something built, but it's on the roadmap for this. Currently, if I make a change in Figma, and Pearson's going to kill me for this, but I'm gonna. I don't even know what I'm doing here. So sorry. I'm sorry, Pearson. I won't do it. I won't even do it. If I made a change in Figma, and I
can go ahead.
exported that.
You can make changes in the Figma if you need to, just for the sake of the example.
All right.
I can revert everything
If
back.
you
It's
want to
okay.
pull this one up, even to make, I don't know, make something different or something, when I import it again, when I hit the button again, it will come in as the same component, but updated. There's no timestamp in here, but maybe that's something we can add. And this preview is a little small still. But that name comes from whatever these names here. And when I bring that back over, it'll come as a new component. I can redrag that on, but in theory, if I drag this on again, if I drag another one on, and I've connected these buttons to things, like let me connect this button to the, I don't know, some big function, and I'll connect this one to the same thing. So these are connected to something now. If I drag the new one on, it won't be connected. But that's something that the AI can fix really easy, and we'll most likely have that automatically do that. It'll probably prompt you, and we'll probably add something in this setting here that gives you the ability, that it gives you the ability to preserve the existing componentry. So if you've wired something up, over in the plugin and you import it, you won't break all of the wiring. And that's something we can do relatively easy now with AI. We drop the component, we say, hey, here's the new one, here's how the old one is. There's some changes, fix the stuff up that you can, and it'll fix that up. If not, you can just prompt it. Currently, you can just prompt it right now as well. So hope that answers your question there. Brad, you said you built it in FM with a web viewer. That is which? Is that the baseball one? If so, sorry, go
I think
ahead.
someone asked, like, how do you get the Figma design into, like, translate it into FileMaker implementation?
Oh,
And
yeah,
that-
yeah. Yeah, so the second one, there's two parts. There's the first one I did while Pearson was on a call. I didn't know he was doing the baseball thing. I took a screenshot of the screen and I added that in. I went here, I went to HTML, I grabbed an HTML block like so. And then I'm going to take a different one here. I'm going to take a different screenshot. And I took a screenshot here. This is what's on my other monitor. It's us. And I said, create this page, create this element page. I'll say layout. I just did something like this, and give it a few seconds, and it converted it and it built that item. So you can do that. You can do that in Figma with a screen, but it won't be as accurate as the plugin. The plugin will be a lot more pixel accurate. So inspecting the current pages to field. So it's just looking at, it's going to give it a little bit to run through here now. Fetching sample headshots. And now it's grabbing sample headshots for the images. This is our version 7 of our AI, right? This is the new one. This should be launching over the next week or so. Replacing selected elements with responsive video grid layout. So now it's going through and it's building up. You can see it in there, and it'll start doing that. And if I would have said add some data, I would have added some fictitious data. On the further roadmap, Claris is going to be releasing an MCP that connects up to our it connects up to FileMaker. I'm not sure if you guys know about that. We've talked about what MCP does in the past. So that's what I just did for that one. Here's Pearson. Pearson's lost some hair. I've lost some weight. Brad, I don't know what you're doing there, right? And Stuart, okay, now we know. So, so you can see, and it's responsive, and that's pretty cool. Like those are real. That's a real layout, right? And that can be bound to real data as well. So that's how I can do that. And what I did with the baseball one. All right, yeah, so Claris is going to be releasing an MCP server. Currently, it only works by connecting to your data, but if they change that and make it give you the ability to connect to schema of FileMaker to be able to control tables, you can do some of this stuff with OData now. That will be massive because now we can use multi-agentic systems like BetterForms and the code editors that have that, and they can be dynamically putting stuff into FileMaker. It could be a mess as well, don't get me wrong, but and most likely will be at first, but they'll be pushing, you can be pushing and saying, hey, connect this, make this in FileMaker, and the AI would ask you a few questions like, do you want a table for, I recommend a table for people, I recommend a table for attendees, I recommend a table for meetings, and connect it all up. That's sort of the idea. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We're going to kick around after the show, but well, hopefully we got some benefit. I think, Pearson, I don't know if you've dropped that other survey in, but we could.
I've got a second survey that I'd like for us to check out if we can. I'll post it in the chat now.
Awesome. Thanks again.